But when you put your insecurities out in the open for everyone to see, you give away power you don't even realize you're handing over. People who don't truly care about you will take those insecurities and use them against you, sometimes subtly, sometimes directly, but always in a way that chips away at your confidence. The truth is, insecurities are like cracks in armor, small, personal, and manageable if you guard them, but dangerous if you let the wrong people see where they are. The moment you expose them, you make yourself a target for judgment, gossip, and manipulation that could have been avoided simply by holding them close. Older women especially face this challenge because society often tries to magnify insecurities tied to age. You hear messages about how you should look younger, act younger, or fit into some narrow version of beauty or relevance. If you allow those pressures to push you into confessing your insecurities out loud to people who don't value you, you risk reinforcing their stereotypes instead of dismantling them. They don't see your vulnerability as honesty. They see it as confirmation of what they already believe. Instead of gaining support, you give fuel to their criticisms. That's why keeping insecurities private doesn't mean you're in denial. It means you're refusing to let the world use them as weapons against you. There's also an emotional cost when insecurities are shared too freely. When you tell someone what bothers you most about yourself, you give them access to your most fragile places. Even people who don't intend to hurt you can unintentionally magnify those feelings by reminding you of them or bringing them up in moments when you least want to hear it. Over time, those reminders keep your insecurities alive instead of allowing them to fade. When you guard them closely, you reduce the chances of them being thrown back at you in a way that stings. Protecting those parts of yourself allows you to work on them privately, in your own time and in your own way, without the added weight of outside voices. Another reason to keep insecurities hidden is that not everyone is capable of handling them with care. Some people are natural encouragers who build you up, but others feed off weakness to feel stronger themselves. If you tell the wrong person about what you doubt in yourself, they might use it to gain leverage, to win arguments, or to position themselves above you. Suddenly, your honesty becomes their advantage, and that changes the balance of the relationship. Keeping those insecurities private means refusing to hand anyone the keys to control how you see yourself. You maintain authority over your identity instead of giving it away piece by piece to whoever is listening. There is also dignity in silence when it comes to insecurities. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the things you're still working on internally. Too many people mistake loud confession for strength, but real strength often looks like quiet composure. When others can't tell what bothers you, they can't use it to rattle you. You project steadiness, even if inside you're still wrestling with certain doubts, and that steadiness earns respect. It tells the world you are not easily shaken, not easily swayed, and not easily broken, and that image often carries more weight than words ever could. What's more, insecurities often shrink when they're kept private. The more you talk about them with the wrong people, the bigger they grow, because words have a way of reinforcing ideas in your mind. But when you hold them in, they become quieter, less powerful, and easier to manage. Privacy gives you space to reframe those insecurities into lessons or to simply let them go. Over time, what once felt like a heavy shadow loses its grip, not because you exposed it to the world, but because you stopped feeding it with attention and outside validation. And finally, there's freedom in knowing that no one has full access to your inner struggles. When you choose what to share and what to hide, you stay in control of your own narrative. People may know pieces of you, but they will never fully grasp the insecurities that try to follow you, and that gives you the advantage of mystery. They see your confidence, your grace, your presence, and they assume that's the whole picture. What they don't see is that you've built a wall around the fragile parts of yourself, not to deny them, but to protect them until they no longer define you. That choice is not weakness, it's wisdom, and it's one of the most empowering decisions an older woman can make. Regrets are one of those deeply personal things that don't need to be handed out like a confession slip to anyone who asks. Everyone has them, and as you grow older, you collect more moments you wish you could have done differently, but those moments are not an invitation for others to dissect or judge your life. The problem with sharing regrets too openly is that people tend to see them as flaws in your character instead of lessons in your journey. They may hold them over you, remind you of them at the wrong time, or use them as ammunition in conversations where they want to feel superior. Regrets, when spoken out loud to the wrong audience, can be twisted into a story about failure rather than growth. And that strips away the dignity you've earned through living and learning. Older women, in particular, often feel pressured to explain themselves as though every regret needs to be accounted for or justified. But the truth is, regrets don't need an audience because they're not about proving anything to anyone else. They are personal markers of your humanity, reminders that you took risks, that you cared enough to try, that you lived fully enough to have choices you sometimes look back on with a different perspective. When you hand those regrets over to other people, they start to tell your story for you, and they rarely tell it with the compassion or context that you hold in your own heart. Privacy keeps that power in your hands, and it ensures that your past remains a foundation, not a weakness. Sharing regrets too freely can also open the door to unnecessary pity, and pity rarely feels supportive. Instead of being seen as strong and resilient, you risk being seen as fragile, defined by what you didn't do instead of what you achieved. People may start looking at you through the lens of your mistakes, as though the entire sum of your life boils down to what went wrong. That kind of perspective is unfair and incomplete, and it reduces the richness of your story to a handful of moments that never defined your worth in the first place. By keeping your regrets private, you allow others to see you as you are now, not as the person you once were in your most vulnerable seasons. There is also the danger that when you reveal regrets, people might compare them to their own lives in a way that creates distance instead of connection. Instead of learning from your honesty, they may silently think, "I would never do that," or "I can't believe she made that choice." What was a moment of openness for you can quickly turn into a quiet form of judgment for them. Protecting your regrets from exposure prevents those kinds of silent comparisons and keeps your relationships on steady ground. People get to know you for your wisdom and your presence today, not for the mistakes they imagine they would have avoided. Another reason to hold your regrets close is that they are not fixed. They change as you change. What you regret in one season might look different in another as you grow and gain perspective. If you've already shared those regrets publicly, people may freeze you in that version of yourself, reminding you of something you've long since moved past. They may define you by what you once said you wished you hadn't done, even when you've learned to see it as something that shaped you for the better. Privacy allows you the freedom to reinterpret your own story as you evolve without having to fight against outdated opinions from others who don't live inside your growth. There's also an element of peace in guarding your regrets. When you constantly speak them out loud, you reopen wounds that may have already begun to heal. Each time you tell the story, you relive it, and reliving regrets rarely makes them lighter. It makes them heavier. By keeping them private, you allow time and reflection to do the healing without interruption. You get to honor the lessons silently without dragging them into the spotlight where they can be misunderstood or misused. That kind of silence isn't avoidance. It's choosing peace over performance, and peace is worth more than validation. Finally, regrets are proof that you've lived, not proof that you've failed. They are signs that you've experienced enough, risked enough, and cared enough to sometimes wish you had chosen differently. But those signs don't belong to everyone else. They belong to you. You earned the right to carry them quietly, to learn from them privately, and to let them shape you without outside interference. Protecting your regrets means keeping your life's most vulnerable truths in the only hands strong enough to hold them, your own. And when you do that, you give yourself the freedom to move forward, defined not by what you wish you'd done differently, but by everything you are still capable of becoming. You ever notice how, as we get older, people think they're entitled to every piece of our lives? Like the older you get, the more people expect you to explain yourself, justify your choices, or hand out your personal business like it's free samples at the grocery store. Let me tell you something. Being older doesn't mean being exposed. In fact, it's the opposite. The wiser you are, the more selective you should be with what you share, because not everything deserves an audience and not everyone has earned access to you. So if you're an older woman listening right now, here are 5 things you should absolutely hide from everyone. When it comes to getting older, one of the most powerful lessons you learn is that not everybody needs to know what's in your wallet or in your bank account. The truth is, when people know too much about your financial situation, they start to make assumptions about you, and often those assumptions are wrong. If they think you have more than they do, jealousy creeps in, and suddenly you become a target for unnecessary gossip or hidden resentment. On the other hand, if they think you have less, they might treat you with pity or look down on you as if your value is tied to the number in your account. Neither of those things is healthy, and neither of them has anything to do with your actual worth. That's why keeping your financial situation private is not about secrecy for secrecy's sake. It's about protection, protecting your peace, your dignity, and the independence you've worked so hard to build. A lot of older women make the mistake of thinking that openness means strength, that if they share every detail about their money, they're being transparent, and people will respect them for it. But transparency isn't always respected. More often than not, transparency gets exploited. You tell someone how much you make or how much you saved, and suddenly they're calculating what you can afford to spend on them or what you should be giving away. They stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a resource. That shift is subtle, but it changes the way they interact with you, and it changes the way you feel around them. Before you know it, you're questioning if their kindness is genuine or if they're just hoping you'll pick up the tab again. And the thing is, money brings out truths in people that you don't always want to see. Someone you thought loved you unconditionally can quickly show a different side when finances are involved. They might envy what you have, resent what you've saved, or take advantage of your generosity. That's why keeping your financial matters private protects your relationships from that kind of erosion. Because once trust is broken over money, it's almost impossible to rebuild it. Privacy, in this case, isn't about being distant. It's about preserving the integrity of your connections. It allows you to keep people in your life for who they are, not for what they think they can gain from you. There's also the freedom that comes with not broadcasting your situation. When no one knows what you have or what you don't, you're free to make choices without outside pressure. You're free to spend on what matters to you without judgment, whether that's something practical or something purely for joy. You're free to save quietly without being told you're stingy, and you're free to give without anyone assuming you have unlimited resources. That freedom is priceless because it lets you live your life on your own terms, not under the weight of other people's opinions. And the older you get, the more valuable that freedom becomes because you realize just how limited your energy and peace really are. Another reason to guard your financial situation is safety. When people know you have money, you become a magnet for those who want to take it. Scams, manipulative relatives, opportunistic acquaintances, they all thrive on people who talk too openly about what they own. Older women, in particular, can be vulnerable to these tactics, and often the harm comes from the very people they trusted the most. By keeping your financial details to yourself, you close the door on opportunities for exploitation. You make it harder for anyone to use your trust against you, and you stay one step ahead of the people who prey on openness. And let's be honest, money isn't even the full picture of who you are. The balance in your account doesn't capture your wisdom, your resilience, or your character. Sharing your financial situation reduces you to a number, and that number is not your identity. It's simply a tool you use to build the life you want. By keeping that tool private, you keep the focus on what really matters: your values, your choices, your experiences, and the relationships you invest in. That's where your true wealth lies, and that's what should be visible to the people in your circle. So when it comes to your finances, discretion is power. It's not about being secretive, it's about setting boundaries. It's about saying, this part of my life is not up for public consumption, and feeling confident in that decision. Because the less people know about your money, the less control they have over your peace of mind, and the more control you keep over your own story. And at this stage of life, your story deserves to be told on your terms, not through the lens of someone else's assumptions or agendas. One of the hardest lessons you learn as you grow older is that not everyone deserves to know what's going on behind closed doors in your personal relationships. The struggles you face with a partner, with family, or even in friendships are deeply personal. And when you expose those struggles to the wrong people, it often does more harm than good. People love to have opinions, and the moment they hear about your problems, they start shaping judgments not only about the person you're with, but about you too. They don't always see the full story, they just take the pieces you give them and build a picture that may not even be close to reality. That picture follows you around long after the problem is resolved, long